other people will discuss Wilbur Woods. That's the first thing. And the second thing is comments will be offered in regards to financial town meeting, finances, etc. Mr. Anderson has been quite persuasive about at least keeping the public as well as the budget committee advised of those things. So to that end, I urge the council to welcome comments not only from the Beach Commission or Budget Committee or any other people that want to be heard. And then I would urge the council president to act in accordance with the emergency ordinance that was adopted on March 16th, largely with the help of Mr. Anderson, who was in the forefront of finding sort of a similar town and then helping us sort of custom made our ordinance to match our circumstances. So with that said, Mr. President, if you want me to talk any further, I won't. I will, but I don't think I need to.
Thank you. That's a good summation of where I think we are. I will say that the declaration of emergency has worked very effectively. The authority that was granted by the council have published 2 reports of our actions. None of those reports or the contents of them has caused any response in terms of people that felt that there needed to be something changed. That process appears to be working well. I would say, in consonance with what the solicitor said, our first item of business is the fact that we would hear input from the Beach Commission. Is there a spokesperson, the chair or otherwise, for the Beach Commission?
There will be. I have to unmute him. Okay, Bill, you should be able to
Yeah.
now.
Bill Ryan, the Beach Commission. I think we have discussed with the police chief quite a few ways to block off South Shore, and he could probably answer better than I did because he gave us a lot of good clues on that. But we're ready to close it down when the council sees fit. Any comments?
Would the police chief care to comment? Thank you.
We obviously had a discussion with the Beach Commission. Myself and Chief Veteran have been looking at this for about a week and a half now. We're got somewhat of a plan in place. The public safety complex has gotten, we have 30 of the large orange construction barrels with the weighted bottoms. We also have 6 of the Jersey barriers that are fillable with water that are portable that we could also utilize. I think the most important part is what we don't have yet is signage, what the sign should actually say. And we had a brief discussion with the Beach Commission in regards to location of that signage to do our best to keep people off of South Shore Road. As we all know, it's no parking the entire length. And should it come to it and we do close it down, we are going to strictly enforce the no parking there to avoid vehicles turning around in people's driveways, damaging lawns, etc.
Comments from the council, perhaps, on your sense of what's being proposed.
If I could go first, you know, if the Beach Commission is recommending shutting down South Shore, I am in agreement with that, especially shutting down, at least just shutting down the parking. I've found at other beaches that have shut down their parking that it has dissuaded people from congregating. And these beaches have still allowed people to walk down there. So I think it's a good idea to shut off the parking lot because I think some folks have been congregating there, and I think we should do all we can to keep people from doing that. But still allowing people to walk down there, you know, if they live in the neighborhood. So.
This is Council Member Larry Anderson, and I did listen in on the Beach Commission's conversation. Chief Raines was also participating in that. Beach Commission had given a lot of thought to the details. At the chief, I would support a robust closure at this point, because if we don't do it now, it will only get harder as the weather improves. Robust signage and robust enforcement. I don't know whether, Bob, you or Dick Humphrey have come up with a draft resolution to this end. I have one. It's probably more than is needed. If you want to see it, I could share my screen at the appropriate time. But I agree with Andrew that I think that, that we, all concerned, including the public and the public health, are better served if we take strong action now rather than wait.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, may I be heard?
Yes.
Dick Humphrey called.
Yes, please go ahead.
Larry, I think your thought is excellent. I think it sounds like the Beach Commission and the Chief of Police and the Town Council seem to be in concert there. What I'm trying to do is to have comments received by Bob Mushin acting as the council through the ordinance of March 16th. So to that end, I would not suggest that the Town Council take votes because they've already taken a vote that is extreme, but also appropriate given the circumstances of the March 16th ordinance. So, Larry, there's nothing to say that you obviously and Bob can't meet tomorrow or later on tonight or whatever to have your suggestions. But to that end, I think Bob has to continually, because there were remarkable changes today, according to the state people, about flexibility and things like that, or lack of flexibility. So to that end, I think that Bob Mushin, with the good guidance of individual counselors, with the two chiefs, the fire chief and the police chief, and with Tony Texera, who's done a remarkable job. By the way, he shows up every day, even Sundays. I think that that it's appropriate, Larry, that you suggest you tell Bob what you think is appropriate, and then at some point after Bob analyzes and receives all the different information, that he acts, and I'm confident that he'll act in a way that, frankly, is consistent with what you were about to propose, perhaps as a council vote. As you can see, what I'm trying to do is not have two town councils. Bob Mushin, the town council as of March 16th, and now a new town council that is saying, let's have a vote. I would prefer that we did not have votes tonight. That's just my thought, because I've analyzed it and I've tried to figure out how to keep the simplicity and the responsiveness and the nimbleness of the intent of our March 16th ordinance. Thank you.
May I respond, Larry Anderson? I understand the legal circumstance under which we're operating, and frankly, I'm not too concerned about the formal the form in which this takes. I would only point out first that we are currently meeting as a council at this moment, and my only thought is that the president can act unilaterally under our order, which I respect and support. It also might be useful to him and to the town if the council were on record somehow in support of the action that he's taking on the town's behalf. So, I'm here to say that I would support this action informally, but I'd be willing to do it in a formal way too. And what I will do then at the end of this meeting is I will simply provide Bob draft, and Dick, you will be able to see it too, the draft of what I prepared, and you can use it to whatever end you wish going forward. Thank you.
Bob, can I speak? It's Gary.
Please, go ahead, Councilor Mataronis.
I sent a letter to Chief Raines, yourself, and Tony a couple of weeks ago when I did take a ride down to South Shore Beach on a weekend, and it was loaded with cars, and most of them from out of town, out of state. And they do congregate down there. And although I really don't want to close the beach, I think when times are as tough as they are, we have to take tough actions. So I would concur with Andrew and Larry that we close that, but also we have to discuss what we're going to do with Lloyd's Beach. The Harbor Beach is okay. There hasn't been many people walking the Harbor Beach, but there has been a terrific amount of foot traffic at Secana Point and at Lloyd's Beach. So it's just not South Shore Beach that we're discussing. But I think in times like this, when safety's a factor and we have the elderly population we need to protect them. And I don't think keeping South Shore Beach open is a gateway for people from out of town to come down there and say, oh, let's go look at the ocean. It's clear down there. They don't have any viruses down in Little Compton. But in fact, they're the ones that are going to bring it to us. And I don't think we really want to subject our elderly population, including me and you, Bob, to that. So I'll concur with Andrew and Larry to close the beach. The only other situation, I think Chief Raines will take care of it. But if we close the beach to traffic, people are going to try to park up on Indian Rock Acres and whatnot and walk down there. And I'm sure the chief and the police department is going to be diligent to not allow that to happen. That's my 2 cents.
Bob, if I may.
Councilor Golembeski.
I think in reference to the town solicitor's 2 councils thing, I think us all being in agreement with you and not taking a vote kind of is like us taking a vote, but not. So it'll work. I think the ordinance that when we granted you the authority for to do what you had to do, I think that covers you making the decision, and we're all in agreement. My concern is for the first responders, because we've also got Taylor's Lane, Lloyd's Beach, the harbor, not just South Shore. I think closing it initially now is probably the better route to take. I was undecided when the meeting started, but as I've listened to the discussions, I'm more persuaded to say we're better off doing it now when it's going to be a little slower than trying to do it later on as it gets busier and busier. In that regards, I would defer to the chief on how to police it, pardon the pun, and to put signage up maybe at Shore Road and South Shore Road on the corner there, so they don't even get to the beach. That will keep them from getting to Indian Rock Acres and the other areas. And I'm sure he's got that under control. The ones I'm not sure about are like Taylor's Lane. It's not really a beach, but people do know it's there. And if they can't get somewhere else, maybe they're just going to drive around and look. So I think it's going to be an all hands on deck affair to make this work.
Bob, it's Gary again. I saw Bob Mara put a blip up about Town Landing. I think that's a good comment, because a lot of people know about Town Landing. If they can't go to South Shore Beach, Lloyd's Beach, or these other beaches that they want to go to, a lot of them do know about Town Landing, and then you'll have them congregating down there. So that's another area I think we should take into consideration.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
I hear all of you loud and clear, but we just need to be cognizant of some of the facts that have come out. And just this week, it was stated that domestic issues of surfacing big time. So we got to be cognizant, of the outlets that some of these folks may need. I'm not saying we should not close or close. That's really a council decision. But we need to be cognizant about the outlets for the folks, as a whole. That's one. Two, we need to be aware that whatever we requesting of our resources, that they are, we are limited, unless you're going to propose some other means for us to reach. I mean, as you know what the forces are here in town. So we got to be aware of that as you propose closings or different actions.
Let me just react here in the middle of this to say that I'm hearing the consensus to try and move to close Shore Beach. I don't believe you literally mean that. I believe you close it to vehicular access and allow walking on the beach. Am I accurately hearing from the council with respect to allowing walking on South Shore Beach?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes.
It's the gatherings have been in the parking lot. They haven't been on the beach. Even when there was, I think, Chief, there was like 55 cars there one day. They were pretty good on the beach itself. It's up in the parking lot is the issue.
Let me also say, in deference to those who have raised the other areas, that's precisely the reason that I think this lends itself to the kind of approach that we've taken with other similar kinds of problems. And that is, we'll take this step. It will force, in fact, people who are intent on getting somewhere to the water to go to another place. So I envision that we will have a series of operations that are designed to, in this April timeframe, try to get set for what is likely to be people trying to get to each of the water accesses. And I think they probably will require somewhat different responses, perhaps. And I'm certainly ready with the administrator's help to do that as well. So I don't think this is the last time we'll discuss this, but I'm hearing from this topic that the idea of closing vehicular access to South Shore Beach is the first job to do, and then move forward with the others.
You know, this is Gary again, Bob. You know, I came in to talk to you today, and we discussed about just allowing town residents in there, but I'm not sure what kind of nightmare that would make for the police department. They would have to check IDs and see if they come from Little Compton. I mean, I hate to shut it off to residents because I don't think they're the problem, but I think that's also discriminatory, and I'm not sure whether we get into a legal situation with that. So maybe just a blanket closure for vehicles.
I notice John Berg is here. Perhaps he would comment with respect to the Nature Conservancy's work at Lloyd's Beach. Have you taken action there, John?
Oh, sorry, that would be my fault. Go ahead, John, I didn't mute you.
You've got the control here, Carol.
I know.
we have officially closed our preserves in Rhode Island, but we've been working together with our partners to try to come up with solutions at places like Lloyd's, where we don't have the in-house authority to work unilaterally. I think we haven't seen a lot of trouble at Lloyd's yet. Or whatever, but I don't know that there have been crowds there yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Bob, if I may?
Yeah. Paul Golomeski.
The other thing that's overriding in all of this is we're not the first ones to do this. It's not going to be a major surprise to a lot of people who show up that the beach is closed. I mean, I think it's going to kind of be, hey, let's go see if they've done it yet or not, more than, oh, why'd you close the beach? So I think that'll take some of the pressure off. If we close it? It's just that we're following the lead of what we're supposed to do. And, it's that same rule, CDC, state and local guidelines, and we're the local guidelines. We have to do it because it's what we're following good practice to do.
All right. Well, I will look forward to working with Councillor Anderson on the wording of how we promulgate this. My sense is that we'll do it through another special directive, of which we have two, one quarantine and the other transfer station. This will become one of those. The posting and implementation of it will be a discussion that we'll do with some urgency so that we can get this in place. I would anticipate by tomorrow.
Bob, if I might interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you see the chat messages?
I see 7 new messages.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot. If we might take a moment for you, just read through those
Sure.
I want to give everyone the opportunity that you've read before you make any further comments.
Thank you. First of the comments is, will Town Landing also be closed to vehicles? I think, again, after our conversation tomorrow morning, we can look at how that might be applied to Town Landing, because I agree that the problem there, of course, is a little different in that our historical experience has been that people park on private property as opposed to on town roads when they're denied the access to the landing. But it doesn't mean we couldn't use something similar to that. And I can also engage with Rob Mara to discuss that in further detail, unless there's something, sir, that you'd want to say now at this point.
Oops. Oh, well, I will have to unmute him.
Okay, I'll tell you what, in order to make this go, I'll commit to making those phone calls. I have a comment regarding not seeing anyone violating social distancing. Please don't close the parking if the guideline is observed to be violated and the action may be necessary. It seems that most people stay in their cars. So there is a subset of people, I think, that in my experience have said, by closing the parking lot, you're also closing the opportunity to simply go there and park and look at the waves and then depart and not get out of your car. We would be impeding that group of people. So we'll work that issue. I don't see an obvious way to accommodate both, but we'll consider that. What about the right of way to the water at the beginning of the beach? That will likely be impeded by anything that we use to close off the beach, and a person would be free to walk through but not drive through to get to the water. Maybe require that entry be limited to vehicles with a dump sticker. We have talked about that in the past, making a common town sticker. We haven't implemented that. I think that would go beyond what, at least in my immediate reaction, what we might be able to use. But I think the first step of closing it off is, as you've heard from most of those who are in the positions of council members, is important to get started sooner rather than later. If South Shore is closed, all traffic will move to Town Landing. That is also, as I said, part of my conversation with Mr. Mara. Also, Sea Spray Way, admittedly, that's true. Can we keep the town beach open for Little Compton residents? Yes, it would actually be open without an ID check for anyone walking onto the beach. Town Landing closure was discussed by the chief at the Beach Commission meeting, says another comment. I overlook South Shore and they walk on the beach and congregate, not just in the parking lot. I believe from my conversations with the police chief, the intention would be for periodic visits to ensure that those kinds of congregations get broken up. We obviously, with the police force we have, can't station an officer there full time. Last week, I counted over 100 people walking on the beach. Admittedly, that is possible, and also to adhere to social distancing. So I think that is an outcome that might occur, but I think it's probably within our plan to restrict parking as the method by which to control that. And question, is there an opinion by the solicitor to blocking the right-of-way access with vehicle? Not sure that that's all of the comment, but.
I believe that you can do so legally.
Okay. Any further discussion on that then?
This is Councilmember Anderson. May I just add, I think Paul made reference to the fact that we have to be mindful of our human resources of enforcement, that is our police, fire, and and this is in response to the question about restricting access to the beach to town residents and the beach commission itself. We don't have the, we have to be mindful of social contact involving our town personnel. And the balance here, the tricky balance, as I'm thinking about it, is how do we protect the public's safety and also protect our town employees? And again, I'm going to just say again that I think a robust effort now, all the things that have been mentioned, robust barrier at the beach, robust signage, and robust enforcement, although that may put our public safety personnel in some exposure, may be more safe than waiting till later in the season when there are more and more people, more and more opportunities for contact. So we're asking a lot of our town employees, but it's just not realistic to expect that we're going to be able to monitor the beach, especially at this point in time, to restrict residents. So to allow residents. But I do think that once the message gets out that there will be ways for people to access the beach on foot, and we want to make that possible, whatever barrier we put there, so that won't be prevented, and it will be safer for everyone.
Yes, Solicitor, go ahead.
Mr. President, and especially Councilor Anderson, I, in anticipation of today's meeting, went to Newport, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was utterly shocked by the fact that they use concrete barriers that you'd use in a construction job to block access to their beaches. So, I mean, Joe Nicholson has been a colleague and a friend of the town for many years. And for them to take that extreme action was rather jarring to me. But it gives me some comfort that we're doing the right thing. And Mr. Anderson points out something that is quite important, which is he's thinking not only about the town, but also about our first responders. Suppose our first responders get involved with someone who shouldn't be there. I mean, he's absolutely right. These are the people on the front line, and I think Mr. Anderson has done a great job of putting them first, and I applaud that. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any further discussion on this matter then? The intention would be that tomorrow we take the action to initiate closure of parking and vehicular access to South Shore, and also then begin the process of moving to the next and the next and the next targets.
With the previous directives that we've given you the authority to carry out already, so you have the authority to do it.
Right. I just want to be sure and the chat items continue here, and we have a series of other possibilities that we obviously intend to look at as well. And to the administrator's point, we also want to be careful that we are providing ways that our own citizens, and for that matter, others that may wish to use recreational facilities, can do so in a way that that is not conducive to the spread of the virus.
Also, Bob, was Wilbur's Woods on this list? Was Wilbur's Woods on this list as well?
In the sense, are you asking, that was not the subject of the item, but yes, it is a corollary to this same action. That's right.
I feel it's getting grouped in with the beaches anyway, because it's a public space, and it will go along with what the Conservation Commission is doing as well.
Thank you. I'll add that to the list. The second item then that we're to consider is an updated status of budget developments for the annual financial town meeting. This is one in which a couple of our town officials, Councilor Anderson and Town Clerk Carol Wardell, have been part of a group that has been looking at those of us who have financial town meetings. How do we deal with that? And I don't want to go into a big review of that at this point, other than to say that represents a very significant problem for us, in that if we're not able to conduct a public hearing, if we're not able to conduct then a financial town meeting, in between which requires us to publish publicly what we're proposing, if none of those is able to happen in a timely fashion, we don't at this point have the ability to determine revenue for next year. We can establish, however, our budget, and I would suggest that our first step, and one that we can take without other initiatives getting to completion, is that the budget committee has a recommended budget, and I would suggest that we take the step, the budget committee initiating this, to hold a virtual meeting, and in that virtual meeting consider the budget that is before them and decide which items they may wish to recommend differently, so that we establish then a recommended budget. We don't have that yet, and that's something that we will need. After that, we'll have to follow the lead of those who are trying to help us with the fact that without the legislature in session, those of us with a home rule charter are bound by our charters to do things in a certain way, and we therefore need to negotiate that path. But I think for right now, a budget committee meeting, virtual meeting, to establish the recommended budget, and at that meeting could be included members of the town council and school committee, so as to be able to answer questions that may arise in the review, as well as the administrator. Comments on that approach?
As directed towards Carol. Carol, have any other cities and towns that have financial town meetings, have they started to deal with this yet and come up with any ideas?
Larry and myself have been on a group that's been working with the League of Cities and Towns. So far, none of them have moved forward with their town meetings. They're all postponing them until we can get some sort of an answer or directive from the governor, because our hands are kind of tied at this point in the game.
Thank you.
So if I may weigh in, this is Larry Anderson again. The good work of I will say the good work of, is his name Brian Daniels at the League of Cities and Towns?
Yes.
Yes.
To try to get the towns, mostly smaller towns, who have these issues with either financial town meetings or budget referendums, which involve budgets being created and approved by then as town or city council. So there are quite a few towns involved. Legally, there is a way to continue with spending based on the previous year's spending if we haven't had a town meeting. One of the legal conundrums is there's no clear way to, under the law, to adopt a tax levy. So you could have a budget but not have a clear way to fund it.
Right.
Also, I think as Carol pointed out, from the governor's point of view, there's been an appeal to get the governor to weigh in with an executive order. I guess the signals are that she's taking it a day at a time with the public health issues, which are immediate all the time. But I think it is a matter of concern. We have to worry about July 1st. That is the beginning of the next fiscal year. So we're at the beginning of April. There is some time for this to work out. I'm somewhat hopeful that we'll get some guidance from somewhere, but to be honest, we don't really have it yet legally. And there's a lot of uncharted legal territory we're in. That's one of the issues.
Well said.
May I add one more thing, Bob?
Yes.
Just at the point when we left off, this is Larry Anderson again. At the point where we left off, we had a pretty good handle on the proposed budget based on the normal circumstances at the time.
Yes.
Where I said as a council member, we hadn't seen even based on what the circumstances were at the time, we hadn't really seen the revenue side of the equation. So I think that for some of us, information-wise, there's still a step that hasn't been put together yet.
And in response to that, I have just this afternoon finished a discussion with the administrator and the assessor regarding property values. And what I'm going to send to the council, to the budget committee tomorrow is my first cut at what we call the recapitulation page. And I've ghosted in there the figures that I think are appropriate for each of the items, and it will give you a sense of the budget. In essence, because of the increase in value of our properties, appears to me to be achievable without substantial difference in the draw that we make from the general fund. But those are all based, to your earlier point, on a series of assumptions which are not solid yet, and therefore, until they are, we won't know for sure. But I guess what I'm saying is, with the budget we have, which is approximately a 3% increase over last year, I believe that we have the ability to fund that with it appears, at least at this point, with a very modest, if any, change in the tax rate. So I believe we have an achievable situation. The question is, we need a lot of permission to get there.
Bob, Richard Humphrey.
Yes.
So I'm not so sure that we need a lot of permission to get there. We're sort of on our own right now. So given the fact that last year, thanks to you and the other council members, our tax rate decreased, I think, by maybe 2%. I think that gives you some flexibility to increase what you need. So, and by the way, what trouble can we get into with the state? I mean, not much. I think the state will look to us, having been very nimble and very decisive, as an example. So I would go forward in the way that you think best. You know, Larry was the town moderator for a number of years. I think the two of you can figure out a way that will get us into a safe envelope and just proceed.
Well, in response, I agree. We're certainly not moving forward. The question is, will there arise something that says this is a point beyond which we can't go? And so I believe we have a process that can get there.
I agree. Thank you.
Are there any other? Oh, I have a note from the chair of the budget committee who is on this line with us, a text message saying, I will call a meeting of the budget committee for next week. So the budget committee will be moving out in the direction that I've described. Is there any further matter that needs to come before us? I would then entertain a motion to adjourn the virtual meeting.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is made by Councilor Mataronis and seconded by Councilor Golembeski to adjourn the town council.
Bob, may I be heard? Not that you're voting on anything. You're just saying, is it time to close the meeting? That's all. We don't need any votes, as you know.
I'll take that and declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Be safe, everybody.
Hey, Buzzy, it's good to see you.
Remember, you're still being recorded.
He's hiding out.